Yeah, it's an amazing question because even I looked at your Instagram and you had a post that was talking about the importance of labs. And for me, is once I started digging into functional medicine and working with different practitioners and stuff, I realized that maybe the worst I ever felt was when I was 9% body fat with absolutely
Mm.
shredded abs, and I looked amazing with my shirt off. And I was in my late 20s and my testosterone dipped to about 230,
Oh, wow. Holy
which
cow.
by comparison, right? I'm going to be 39 next month and I
Mm.
am not on any hormone replacement therapy of any kind. And my testosterone's 850. So when I was doing all the things right, the
Yeah.
fasting, the keto, the cold plunging, the workouts, the saunas, everything, just like stress, 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 I looked
Mhm.
fantastic. And I felt terrible. So I went deep down that rabbit hole. That was how I found bioenergetics and the work of Dr. Ray Peat and really looking at this sort of pro-metabolic approach. And over time, I've just dug deeper and deeper and deeper into this stuff and realized that I think, honestly, diet culture is the primary driver of our global infertility epidemic.
Welcome to Hopeful and Wholesome, the show where ambitious women come home to their bodies. I'm your host, Hope Pedraza, and I'm a functional practitioner, human design guide, and expert on all things energy, and your partner in decoding the language of your body. This is your space to reconnect with your body's wisdom, reclaim your energy, and rise into alignment in your health, your business, and your life. Because thriving isn't about pushing harder, it's about learning to listen deeper. So let's dive in because your next breakthrough starts right now. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Justin Nault. He is the founder of Clovis and dedicated to helping people break free from diet culture, fitness myths, and the broken medical system. His mission is to empower others to heal their metabolisms and reclaim their health through nourishment, self-acceptance, and holistic well-being. With over 650,000 followers and a thriving 12,000 member Clovis community, Justin is leading a revolution in health, showing people that true freedom comes from living authentically and rejecting toxic trends. And those are the topics we are diving in today. Me and Justin are talking about diet culture and really the toxicity around diet culture, how it's affected things like fertility, our mental health, depression, our emotional resilience, and what the connection is between food and our emotional resilience, and how our emotions and self-love really is the foundation for transformation, whether we're talking about a physical transformation, mental, emotional. So many great topics we're covering in this episode. So let's jump in. All right, y'all, I'm here with Justin. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Justin.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this convo with you. And I would love to kick us off because there's so many directions we can take this conversation, but I would love to kick us off with just your journey into kind of coming into the wellness space and how you got here, what drove you to make this your mission.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of by accident. I always laugh and say, 10 years ago, if you would have told me that I'd be teaching people nutrition, I would have thought you were completely out of your mind because I was in the thick of a 15-year music career and I was doing about 300 shows a year in Nashville.
Wow.
I had a reality TV show when I was 25 and it was just my whole life was performance based. The health and wellness piece was a lot like anyone else. When I was younger, I had a lot of body dysmorphia because I grew up as a real chubby kid. I went to high school like almost 200 pounds and probably
Mm.
6 inches shorter than I am now. And I became obsessed with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. And it was just like, I will punish my body until I love it. And the love of body really never came. And then, I became a performer for a career when I was 17 years old, playing piano and singing. That led me to Berklee College of Music, led me to Nashville. So you basically take like a body dysmorphic teenager, put him into the body of a full grown man who's now living under stage lights and spotlights all the time as a really gnarly recipe for disasters. For me, it was really, really heavy on the fitness side. It was like, I will punish my body as much as it takes to look the way that I want to look. And by my late 20s, my health was like falling apart as a result of that. Like didn't matter what I did, CrossFit, powerlifting, jujitsu, boxing, everything you could imagine. And that was when I really started to take a closer look at the nutrition side of things. And I found the paleo diet, did my first paleo reset and had significant changes in body composition and was really blown away. I felt like I'd found some kind of magic or something. And right around that time, I was doing well in the music industry at that point. So my days were my own and I just self-study mostly. And then I decided to become a nutritional therapist. So I became a nutritional therapist just to treat myself. And I got pretty fascinated with like epigenetics and how that all works. And around that same time, my niece was born terminally disabled.
Mm.
So she was having over 300 seizures a day from birth.
Yeah.
So within 7 days of life, she was put in the pediatric ICU. They gave her less than 3 years to live. It was a really gnarly situation. And what they ended up doing with her was installing a G tube, a feeding tube in her belly, because she couldn't eat or drink. And that was my first introduction to the ketogenic diet. So the ketogenic diet, as we now know, the keto diet that people follow in a medical setting is for the suppression of epileptic seizures in children, toddlers, infants. So that was my first intro into this. And the way that they, create a ketogenic diet in a baby that age is they have a formula called KetoCal. This is made by Danone, which is obviously a for-profit big food company that has contracts with all the hospitals. And I knew just enough about nutrition at that point to just check the ingredients on KetoCal. And it was definitely high fat, low carb, but the fat sources were all hydrogenated vegetable oils. And then there's artificial flavors and sweetenings, cornstarch, all this other stuff. And then all the vitamins they were using were like synthetic, non-usable forms of vitamins. So I was like, this is toxic sludge. And I brought that to the attention of a renowned neurologist. And he looked at the label, and he looked at me, and he said, I never thought to check that. And that was the red pill moment, my cliche red pill moment where I was like, there are no adults in the room. There's nobody coming to save us here, And I ended up making a paleo-friendly baby formula for my niece in my kitchen with food dehydrators, food processors. And I had fallen out of love with the music industry. I'd been trying to get out of it for a while. So I actually worked with a food and beverage consulting company, turned that into my first protein superfood powder called the Perfect Paleo Powder back then. Started selling it to CrossFitters. Then I got on Facebook Live and started sharing what I was learning. I went deep down the rabbit hole of, started with Medical Nemesis, which is a really gnarly book if anybody wants to read that, and just discovering the sheer number of toxins that we're faced with in the West, but now globally as well, and that it was destroying metabolic health. And I started sharing that publicly, and it caught on very quickly. And next thing I knew, I had a really big Facebook group, and fast forward to today, it's almost 1 million followers across all platforms. Wow. And thousands of transformation stories. And, it's led to things like the recent Maha documentaries that I filmed for and the Maha podcast and all this stuff. So the message is getting out there, which is amazing, 10 years later for me.
That's awesome. What a story. Yeah. I love, because it was a little bit accidental, right? All these things, just like one breadcrumb at a time, following one breadcrumb at a time and kind of following what the universe is throwing at you. What do you feel like? So I think there's a lot of what you said that will resonate with people, women that are listening. And it's funny because I say funny, like not funny, haha, but like ironic, because I think sometimes we think about body dysmorphia. We think that it's, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times people think like it's just something that women deal with, but it's always, for me, I feel like it's always a little bit refreshing to be like, no, this isn't just a woman thing. Like this is a human thing, and it happens to men too. And a lot of times it shows up in different ways, but the whole like punishing yourself into health and punishing yourself into submission, that's such a common thread among men and women, and how we approach wellness and being quote unquote being healthy, which you and I both know it's not really how it works. So I would love to know how, like, what was the thing for you so oh my gosh, we've talked about diet culture multiple times on this show. I don't know, like I was a proponent of it. I mean, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, like it's just part of life, right? And I mean, I know it lingered on after the 2000s, but it was so ingrained, especially in the 90s. What do you think for you was, I don't know if there was like the thing, but what was something that helped you get past that part of like recognizing, like I know you said you found nutrition, but what was the kind of the catalyst where you're like, hey, maybe I should be looking at things a little bit differently?
Yeah, it's an amazing question, because even I looked at your Instagram and you had a post that was talking about the importance of labs. And for me, once I started digging into functional medicine and working with different practitioners and stuff, I realized that maybe the worst I ever felt was when I was 9% body fat with absolutely shredded abs, and I looked amazing with my shirt off, and I was in my late 20s and my testosterone dipped to about 230.
Oh, wow.
Which by comparison, right? I'm going to be 39 next month, and I am not on any hormone replacement therapy of any kind, and my testosterone's 850. So when I was doing all the things right, the fasting, the keto, the cold plunging, the workouts, the saunas, everything, just like stress. I looked fantastic. And I felt terrible. So I went deep down that rabbit hole. That was how I found bioenergetics and the work of Dr. Ray Peat, and really looking at this sort of pro-metabolic approach. And over time, I've just dug deeper and deeper and deeper into this stuff and realized that I think, honestly, diet culture is the primary driver of our global infertility epidemic. Because what we have on social media now is, the term I use is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, is we are drowning in a sea of infertile six-packs.
This is great.
So
That's really good.
yeah, I mean, we see people that since the 90s have been following 1,200 calorie a day diets.
100%.
And like the only way that we measure health really is shirtless pictures and abs online.
Yeah.
So since, 2010, when YouTube really blew up, and then years later, Instagram and all this stuff, like you got to think back in the 80s and 90s, yeah, we saw magazine covers and movies and stuff, but we were not bombarded on our feed all day, every day,
For sure.
with completely unnatural bodies.
For sure.
So we have this situation now where, especially, and like you said, the body dysmorphic thing, both genders deal with this, and it's same gender that's driving the body dysmorphia. It's women judging women, and it's men judging men,
Right.
Like
totally.
the bodybuilder, shredded men, bigger biceps, bigger pecs, they're doing that for other men in this weird competition place. Now, here's the really strange part, is they're competing with other men to be the alpha male. And the thing that they're doing is making them infertile. So the entire purpose of being an alpha male is so you have more access to mates to reproduce. And then on the female side, you have this situation where it's just get skinnier and skinnier, or more shredded, or size 000, or I don't even know how the sizes work, right? Also making women infertile. And ironically, when you poll most men, making them less attractive to other men. So now we are stuck in this crazy cluster where it's like aesthetics have trumped the future of the species. And we find ourselves in a really sticky spot where these guys don't notice it until they go later in life to have children, and they get off the testosterone and they get off all the peptides, and they realize that they're in a really bad spot. And other things I've dove into too is like, I don't think most women realize that a huge reason for a large number of miscarriages is the quality of sperm in your male partner.
Right. Yeah. It's not just the women's fault here. Yeah.
Totally. And it's insane that we just like throw that at the feet of women. Like, well, you figure it out.
Exactly. You're having the baby. It has to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is what really drives my work now. And we have something in my company's called Clovis, and we have Clovis babies. And Clovis babies, my clients named Clovis babies, which was amazing. And it was when women came into the program who had at least one failed attempt at IVF, came into the program, we cleaned up their diet, normally double their caloric intake. And 6, 8, 9 months later, they're able to conceive naturally. And we call them Clovis babies.
I love that. That's amazing. It's funny you say that about the calories. There was I'm in a group with some other functional practitioners, and somebody posted something the other day about this woman. I think she was in her 40s. I can't remember exactly how old she was, but she was dealing with some estrogen, progesterone stuff. And she's asking questions about some of the labs that came up, and some of the things that some of the other practitioners were talking about were like their own personal stories. And, a couple of them were saying, my estrogen levels were at their best when I held on to more body fat. Yeah. And trying to teach that to women in the age that we're living in is a really hard conversation to have. Like, there's a reason that women are supposed to have, certain amount of body fat. And I think we really don't, to your point of us being inundated with the images of whatever we see as the perfect bodies, but also thinking that we're so like, I had these conversations with my clients too. Like, you're eating, like my toddler eats more calories than you're eating. Like, this is a problem for your hormones. But it's such a hard conversation. It's a hard concept for people to grasp of the whole eating more thing. I would love to hear your take on that. Like, how do you help women who either they've been a product of diet culture, they've been in this cycle of constantly like, I need to be skinnier and smaller and eat less. How do you help them make that shift where you're telling them like, hey, you need to eat more calories. Like, we need to put more, like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. I mean, first things first, like women and men, you can look however you want to look. You can be shredded if you want to be shredded. Just understand, like, if that's your priority, it's going to come at the expense of certain other things. Like I used to do nutrition for UFC fighters for their weight cuts. And I worked with a lot of female fighters, and I would get them absolutely shredded. But what I prided myself on is that they wouldn't get amenorrhea. So for the fertility discussion, like, look no further than Olympic gymnasts and UFC fighters. Like, any female athlete who is carefully controlling their diet normally loses their period and they become infertile, right? So that's like clue number one. So we know you need more energy. And nothing drives me more crazy than when a woman comes to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on. Look at my cabinet full of supplements. Yeah. And I'm taking this prenatal thing that's supposed to make me more fertile, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how many calories are you eating? They're like 1,400. Well, okay. Your vitamins and minerals, those are cofactors and enzymes. They're not driving energy production in the body, right? So to answer your question of how I convince them to eat more, I always say that nobody is suffering from a lack of information. in today's society.
100%.
They are bombarded and overwhelmed.
Yes.
So most women are surprised that when they come into the program, men included as well, the very first thing I have them do is stand in a mirror, look themselves in the eyes, and say, I love you out loud 10 times. So we start from the jump, day one, non-negotiable, with daily self-love practices. So I have journaling prompts that help them understand where their beliefs around caloric intake, health and wellness, weight, where it all came from. For example, I'll have a lot of women I'll ask them about childhood, and they're like, oh, my mom and dad were great. They told me like I'm beautiful exactly as I am. They always told me how perfect I am. They were so great. They didn't do anything wrong. Words. And there's an amazing quote by Peter Crone that says, children will do a terrible job listening to you and will do an amazing job becoming you.
Yes.
So I say, that's great. Mom told you were beautiful out loud.
Yes.
How often did you see her weigh herself?
100%.
How often was she crying? Yeah, crying about not fitting in the skinny jeans, like not eating food at the family cookout because she's trying to be a size 0 or whatever, right? So we actually have to start with emotion and psyche primarily before anything else, so they can actually feel safe in their own body. And if I can reframe food from restriction, diet, suffering, sacrifice, getting healthy sucks, right? We flip the script where they're looking at it through the lens of abundance, nourishment, right? Then we're looking at it through the lens of self-love. Nourishing your body with the right foods. I'm not saying double your caloric intake of Burger King, like absolutely not. But you do have to love yourself enough to nourish your body and understand that the act of health and wellness should never suck. It should never feel like suffering. You should never be having a migraine and hungry all day because you're on some kind of diet. Like we have to get from a place of self-punishment and self-loathing to self-love. We have to get there. So it's mostly an emotional and psychological process that we have to go through. And that's what it starts with.
Yeah. Hey, y'all, we'll get right back to the episode. But first, let me ask you this. You've built a vision that others admire. And you've built something that you're really proud of. But behind the scenes, your body feels like it's lagging behind. It just can't quite catch up to your brilliance and your mission that you have. That late night second wind, the foggy mornings, the hormone shifts, the endless push and forcing. You can't strategize your way out of that. And you already know you don't need more supplements. You don't need another supplement stack. You also don't need another side hustle disguised as self-care, because nobody wants to have their health as a side hustle. This is about recalibrating your entire ecosystem. And that's why I created the Quantum Reset, a premium 3-month high-touch healing experience for visionary women who are ready to feel as powerful in their bodies as they do in their business. Inside, we decode your nervous system, your minerals, your hormones. We read your labs like the sacred text that it is, so we have actual answers. And then we pair that with deep energetic recalibration, subconscious release. We use gene keys, we use human design, and true embodied healing. This isn't about fixing burnout, because that's not what we're doing here. This is about becoming the woman whose body is powerful, whose body is completely electric, whose energy, clarity, radiance finally matches the size of her mission. If you know your success isn't meant to cost you your vitality, and you're ready for a science-backed, spirit-led reset, then the Quantum Reset is your invitation. So check the link in the show notes or send me a message on Instagram, and let's bring your body back online with your brilliance. Now, let's get back to the show. No, that is the only place to start. I think that makes a ton of sense. The other thing with a lot of the women listening, everybody listening is a woman, and everybody listening here is a high achiever, right? They're doing the thing. And I think the piece you just spoke to is a really crucial starting point for them, because I think the other thing is a lot of women listening deal with energy, low energy, lacking energy, because they're going 90 miles a minute and doing 28,000 things a day. And with low energy can come things like anxiety. And we talk a lot about burnout on the show. And so from a nutrition perspective, what is your approach to that? Like using food to help with that part of what's going on with the body?
Sure. If we look at human metabolism for what it is, like the entirety of metabolism is all the processes that are responsible for taking food, substrate, turning it into energy, ATP. So in like the nerdy speak that we love, right? It's like at the level of the mitochondria, how do we help our body generate more ATP? because ATP is required for everything. So to speak to what you said, like for instance, in clinical studies, we know that depressed and anxious subjects, they're generating 20% less ATP in the frontal lobe of their brains. We know that obese individuals in clinical studies generate anywhere from 15 to 30% less ATP in their muscle tissues. So obesity, infertility, depression, anxiety, in most cases autoimmune diseases, these are a low energy state in the body. You don't have enough energy available. And that energy is required for everything, right? If you look at the poison cyanide, if you take cyanide, what that's doing is you cannot create ATP. And within milliseconds, you die a very painful death. So ATP is that critically important, right? So what we have to do is look at the foods that are the easiest for the human system to convert into ATP. So we want the least amount of stress possible on the digestive system and the most amount of ATP created. So step one is getting rid of the obvious metabolic toxins, whether it's food dyes, seed oils, pesticides, microplastics, all these kinds of things, environmental toxins and food toxins, making sure you're not drinking, your tap water from your city or whatever. And then we get into the foods that are superfoods that are very easy to digest, what I call my super proteins, which is, bone broth, shellfish, organ meats, these kinds of things. And then moving into the energy macros of fat and carbohydrates, like where are your carbohydrates coming from? Where are your fats coming from? Like we don't want seed oils. We want coconut oil, tallow, butter, these kinds of things. And making sure that people aren't afraid of specific types of energy, right? There's the high carb, low fat people, and then there is the low carb, high fat people. And like they villainize one another all across the board instead of understanding that like all of these macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrates all serve specific roles. So I don't know if that answers your question, but what we're trying to do is get rid of the metabolic toxins, which disrupt energy production, and use the most easily digestible foods with the highest nutrient density to increase energy production in the body.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think that totally answers my question. And I think that's the part that I think when we're in the thick of the dealing with the energy or the burnout, the last thing, maybe not the last thing, but I just don't think a lot of us are really, we're not thinking about all those things at all those different levels. Because it's one thing to think like, okay, remembering to eat. I have some clients who it's like, just remembering to eat is an accomplishment. But looking at those things at different levels with the toxicity and how much energy we're getting from macronutrients, all that, no, that makes a ton of sense. So when we're looking at putting all of this together, and I'm so glad that you brought up the self-love piece, because I think that is a piece that, I had the episode actually came out yesterday. It was a gal talking about money mindset. She takes this holistic approach. And I was saying this to her. We did like an Instagram live that I think we're so good at compartmentalizing our bodies. Like we separate the mind from the body, from the soul, right? Which now, we have the tagline, mental health is health. So I think we know that all these things go together, but we don't always approach it in that way. And so like our conversation is about money and the mind, body, soul approach to money. And I think this is the other thing too, talking about nutrition. Like it's one thing to talk about nutrition, just what you're eating. But I think you made such a good point talking about the self-love piece, because it's not just about the food, just like the money is not just about the money, right? It's not just about the food. Like there's these layers there's always an emotional, energetic component to everything. Yeah. And I think that's the piece that I wanted to bring out, if you want to speak on that.
Yeah. With my one-on-one clients, we move day one into somatic practices, really, really intense somatic practices on purpose, because this is like, it's a psychospiritual journey that we're on, right? I always actually say that like the evolution of your dietary beliefs and the way that you look at diet is very similar to the evolution of the psyche, or like in Jungian psychotherapy, like the different archetypes of coming from like spiritual adolescence into maturity, right? It's like understanding food is not your enemy.
Right.
And in one-on-one coaching, I use this term, how you do something is how you do everything,
right,
or everything is everything. So when we tease these beliefs apart and we see if somebody comes to me and they're like, I've been suffering for 30 years, I've been on every diet known to man, I have low energy, I have low libido, my hair's falling out, I'm cold all the time, I'm stressed out, I'm on an antidepressant, all these different things, I know immediately, if I go start poking around in other areas of their life, they believe health and wellness sucks and is very hard. They probably believe that love and romance is very hard. It's a lot of suffering and sacrifice. Marriage is a constant negotiation and you never really get what you want, but you just got to make it work, right? Parenting, oh, it's so hard. It's so stressful. The kids are so demanding. They always want money mindset. Money is so hard. I'm constantly worried about the bills. I can never seem to make enough. The cash flow is not right. How you do something is how you do everything. If you're living in a body where you don't believe that you are unconditionally worthy of every single thing you have ever desired, until you get to that place, life is going to carry a tremendous amount of struggle. I don't deserve money. Money flows to me just for me being me. I don't deserve to be healthy. And if I run 100 miles like David Goggins, then I deserve to be healthy. No, 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 no. That's my inherent right as a human here in this 3D reality to just experience health and wellness. Money is as available as oxygen. Love is as available as oxygen. Community, friends, adventure, it's all as available as oxygen. It's right there. When I take a breath in, I don't hold it because I'm nervous that no more air is coming, right? So it's the same way that I spend money freely. Money flows to me freely and I spend it freely and I live a wonderful life. I have a great time. You see what I mean? So it's like this, we really, when I say we're switching out of diet culture mindset, which is suffering, sacrifice, restriction, and we shift to nourishment, abundance, self-love, you will start to see this trickle into every single area of your life. Yes. All of a sudden, there's more joy and laughter in your marriage. You're getting along with your kids better. You're not snapping at them. And it's multifaceted because when you're low energy, you're in fight or flight state. You're going to be more emotionally reactive when your kids do something that you don't like, or your husband speaks to you and all of a sudden you're reading a tone that's not really there. And now you're in a fight, right? So we really are just trying to get people to a place where their nervous system actually feels safe and loved. Yeah. That's it. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's it. 100%. I agree with everything you just said. And I think a common piece, and you touched on it a little bit there, but I find so often, at least with the women that I work with, I did a whole series on this in the podcast, but a common piece so often is that worthiness piece. Just like you said, I'm not worthy of having money. I have it because it's inherent. It's an inherent right, just like health, anything. But that worthiness piece is such, especially for women, I think especially for women, is such a tricky and sneaky little booger that gets in our, subconscious programming that does affect all those areas that you just talked about. Because I agree. And then it's so funny because we literally had that conversation on the previous episode. How you do one thing is how you do everything. There's this common thread among all these areas of your life, and you find something in your money mindset or how your relationship that's going to show up in your health. But I feel like that worthiness piece is such a common factor that's affecting how we're operating on all those different levels.
Yeah. I mean, we've really been programmed that suffering is the human condition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
It doesn't have to be that at all. You can simply choose that this is an abundant universe that you live in and the things that you want will come to you, but the trouble there too, it's just like diet culture where if you're counting every single calorie and you need to do 6 hours a week of zone 2 cardio and you need 3 resistance training sessions for 45 to 60 minutes, it's white knuckle gripping the entire thing. When was the last time you woke up and closed your eyes and checked into your body? And we're I always say this, I go back to David Goggins a lot because he's just got this, I got to run 100 miles a day, right? Self-love is not the act of when you get up and you're no matter how I feel today, no matter how bad my knees and hips hurt, I have to go run 100 miles. Self-love is when you say, I'm going to listen to my body today and go back to bed, and I still love myself. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I didn't do what I should do according to XYZ influencer or protocol that I'm following or whatever. Can you get to a place where the only opinion that matters to you is your own? And it sounds selfish, but it's not. It's actually selfless, right? I deal with this with moms all the time, what I call mommy martyrdom, where it's Justin, I don't have time. I don't have time to go to the yoga class that I love. Well, why not? Because I'm doing XYZ. I don't have time to eat healthy. Why? Because I'm making meals for everybody else. I got to get the kids out there, blah, 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 blah. And I'm listen, it may feel selfless to you to put everyone else's needs before your own. But when you think about the fact that because you're not eating well, you're not doing your own hobbies, you're not taking care of your health and wellness and your mental health, you're going to be more reactive, more snappy, in a worse mood. So are you really showing up for your family the way that you want to? It's far more selfless to put your oxygen mask on first, take care of yourself and your needs, and then show up as the best version of you for the people that you love.
100%. That is so profound. And I think, we say that cliche all the time, but I think we really do have a hard time embodying that piece because you're right. You can't, I hesitate to even say you can't pour from an empty cup because I hate the saying, but it's so true. I mean, I think it's, it's so, there's just so much programming around, we have to give and be, that's so profound though. Okay. I could talk about this for the next 2 hours, but I do want to, I think that was such a good
a good nugget to leave people with on that note. And I do have one more question that I want to ask you. Before I ask you that, can you let everybody know where they can find out more about you, your company that you talked about that's helping women, especially those who want to be moms and are having trouble, and tell us all the things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the easiest way is to just look for me directly on all social media. It's Justin Nault Official. So at Justin Nault Official everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the places. My company is Clovis. It's a nutritional supplement company at iamclovis.com. But honestly, the best way is just go to Instagram, send me a DM, and we can take it from there. If you want a foods list or anything I mentioned here, like I'll send it to you happily.
Yeah, love it. All that would be in the show notes. So I can go check it out and give Justin a follow and follow along. The last question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Yeah, I would say to what we've talked about here, if you have never intentionally set aside time to work on self-love, it's the most important thing that you can do, in my opinion. This gets a little woo-woo, but I think of the entire universe as a mirror of my internal state. So the more time I can spend making sure that I love myself unconditionally and I show up for myself with unconditional safety, the better I'm going to show up for my friends, my partner, my family, everybody. So understanding that you're going to have the very best human experience you can have, the deeper you love yourself.
Love that. Those are words of wisdom we can all live by. So thank you for sharing that. And for all the big things that you're doing in the world and for spending time with us today. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.